Okay, you see my screen, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Very good. So, yeah, welcome to this course. And the course name is Applied Finite Element Method. You see the name applied. We're gonna do a lot of programming. So we have to implement finite element method to solve some realistic problems. So this is going to be one part of the assessment, and I'm going to come back to this point in a while. So I can tell a little bit about myself. My name is Murtaza. I did my master education in mathematics from Tajikistan. Tajikistan, not so many people know because it is not rich and it's a very quiet country. It is in the Central Asia. Then in 2006, I did my master education at KTH, Sweden. Then I did my PhD at Sweden. 3 years I spent in Texas A&M University, where I was a postdoc. I came back to Uppsala since 2014. I'm working as a lecturer. So yeah, finite element is the main topic of my research. I developed finite element since 2005, and mostly I do computational fluid dynamics and also some aerodynamics. Okay, so this is something, if you are looking for some master thesis or something in future, maybe you can just keep in mind. So yeah, this is short information about the course. This is 5 HP, and all updates, everything will be on the student portal this time. Homework, lectures, after each lecture, I upload my lecture notes and about the books, projects, elaborations, everything, all updates. It's going to be news, it will be on the student portal. So yeah, but this year should be 2020, of course. And I saw that some people have some problem in registering to this course. If you have a problem, write to this email, IT-Kansli. If they don't answer, just let me know. I will talk to them, and you will be registered. But until then, you have this link I sent to some of you. I mean, the link to this Zoom. You are welcome to join and follow the course, and yeah, until you get registered, of course. So the first part of this lecture, I will talk about the goals and literature, and I will talk about the schedule. So I will roughly say approximately what we are going to study in this course and this kind of stuff. Then I will talk about examination. So what would be the part of this examination here? And yeah, then yeah, about finite element. If you have taken BV3 course, you have seen some of my slides. But if you are not taking BV3 course, it's going to be something that information, I think it is useful. So let me put this annotate. It doesn't. Okay. All right, annotation doesn't work. All right, so yeah, then I will show some examples at the end. Why I have this? Okay. All right, so yeah, here I wrote about the what is needed to pass and what is the expectation of this course. I wrote in the student portal, but in short, like I just summarized here, after this course, you should be able to formulate finite element method for certain PDE problems, stationary and time dependent in 1D and 2D. So if you have taken BV3 course, you already know how to do it in 1D, but this is going to be like extension here to 2D. Then we talk a lot about error estimates. We're going to talk about a priori estimate, a posteriori estimates, etc. So this will be, this was not covered in the BV3 course. Then, since we say that one part of the assessment is implementation, you will do implementation in 1D, in 2D. We use MATLAB, but you can of course use something else, whatever you want. Then for 3-dimensional case and realistic problem, we're going to use some finite element software. I will talk also about which finite element software we use in a while. So the course literature is the main one, which we follow chapter by chapter, is Mats Larsson and Benson. I will put a link to this book. If you are downloading from University IP, you can, it is free. You can download it for free. But if you are not in the university, you just let me know. I will probably just upload the PDF. Okay. Then, so we have some additional books. If you want to learn more about finite element, more details, there's a really good book by Claes Jansson. It's a big book, like thick, almost 600 pages, and there's a lot of application and implementation, error estimates, many things. And so the third book is by Claes Jansson. I will also show the picture of Claes Jansson. He's a Swedish mathematician. This book is quite old, but it's very popular book in many countries. So I think it is worth of buying it, maybe like $10 in Amazon, I don't know. But the last one is, it's quite advanced if you want to learn so mathematical theory in finite element. So this is something like, from French school. So here I put just, you know, it is preliminary. Maybe we don't have 8 weeks, but I approximately divided by a certain of weeks. So we have some question here. Is the course more or less a new start on finite element, or should we have to remember from BV3? So if you know a lot of stuff from BV3, it is very useful, but it's not BV3, it is BV3. It's Scientific Computing 3. But if you took BV3 course, Scientific Computing course, long time ago and you don't remember, you don't worry, because I'm going to repeat every topic we go. I'm not going to refer back to the other course. I'm going to repeat, even if it's short. All right, so is the step large to 3D finite element formulation, or do the formulas extend naturally? Yeah, so this is a good question. 1D finite element is a little bit different. So 2D finite element, of course, the formulation is exactly the same, but the operators that we are going to use, they are a little bit different. So 2D and 3D finite elements, formulation does not change. It is exactly the same. And the only difference is the mesh. So of course, in 2D, we are using some triangulars. In 3D, we're going to use tetrahedrons, which is a little bit different. All right. So this is a preliminary weekly schedule. What we are going to learn, we start with piecewise polynomial approximation in 1D. We will learn what is, because our continuous solution, let's say that in 1D it's going to be some kind of function. and the finite element method, we are not approximating a discrete point like in finite difference scheme. In finite element method, we're gonna approximate the exact solution with certain type of polynomials. So these polynomials, they could be linear functions, they could be quadratic functions. In general, yeah, they could be any high order polynomials. The good thing with polynomials, we can construct polynomials. So this is what we learn in the first week. Then we will talk about some certain type of approximation, so-called interpolation, projection. So we will see the difference between interpolation and projections in the first part. All right, so then we move to finite element in 1D. So this is going to be a lot of repetition from the Scientific Computing 3 course. So if you are taking that course, you will see a lot of similarities, but it's going to be 1 or 2 lectures at most. So then we move to piecewise polynomial approximation in 2D. The same thing we extended in 2D. So we talk about how to construct these spaces in 2D. And yeah, I put lab 1. Lab 1 is going to be, of course, for the 1D finite element. All right, so then we do extension in 2D. Then we're going to move to time-dependent problem. So lab 2 is going to be after the second part. Second part is 2D finite element. So when we go to time-dependent problem, we're going to learn a lot about stability estimate, when this approximation is stable, what time stepping you have to use, etc. So then we do some course review in repetition. In the last part of the project, we use something called the Phoenix project. It is open source finite element software, and it is freely available. We're going to have 1 lab on the Phoenix project. And the third part of the project is it uses this Phoenix. So I will also come in a minute. So we have final exam. It will be in January. Yeah, I think it is going to be the second week of January. So here I talk something about the project. So when I teach my courses, I like the way that project drives the course. So that says I introduce project early in the beginning of the course. I'm working on the project today and tomorrow. Hopefully I will upload it this week. So then the course, you see, is constructed to support this project. So you should be able to start the project from lecture 1 or lecture 2. Of course, this lecture 1 is now, it's online lecture. I mean, it's an introduction lecture now, but maybe from lecture 2, you should be able, after each lecture, find a little piece in the project and start working on that. So the project has 3 parts. Part A is, finite element 1D. Then part B is we do finite element in 2D. The code, we write it in MATLAB or any other language that you prefer. So I didn't put the deadline now because I'm going to see, I will see the schedule and I will put the deadline. So I want to make it reasonable that after the lab, we will have few days, then it will be deadline. So the last part is Phoenix implementation. So I strongly encourage you. So Phoenix, we have this software installed in our school computers. There are some Linux machines. If you are logging in from home, you have to use some SSH to log in it. I will try to put some documentation on how to log into these Linux machines if you don't know already. But you can of course install Phoenix project in your machine. I think if I go to the web, here I go to, so the website is called phoenixproject.org. Do you see the website here? So if you go to download, then there are several options. So I personally use Linux and MacBook. I never used Windows, so I don't know how to install it on Windows, but there are some instructions. So what I would encourage you, if you want to use your own laptop, you should start from already today. You have to download and install Phoenix, because you shouldn't postpone it. I mean, if you postpone it, then you are almost 90 students, and me and Pei, we don't, I don't think that we can manage to help you. But if you cannot install it, it is okay. You can log into university machines, and Phoenix project is installed on the university Linux machines. Okay, so let me go back to the slides. Yeah, so this is the main thing that I want to say here. The project is individual. You see, like you have to write your own code. You have to write your own report. And the final deadline is sharp. So when I say sharp, your grade is decided how you follow the deadline. So for example, I put something here. Let's say that examination in January. So here I put pass and fail, but this year we will actually grade the project. If you follow the deadline and you write really good project, then of course you get 5, for example. Then if your final exam on January is 5, you get 5. But here you see that fail means that you don't follow the deadline and you come back after 1 year. You cannot get high grade in this course because you can only get grade 3 for your project. So I introduced this because in the past, many people, they just come after 1 year and I mean, probably it is fine in this country, but this is not fine for those students who work really hard during the course and, they write exam and also the project in time. It is not fair for them. Okay. So yeah, the exam as it is now, it's planned as online exam. It's going to be, I think, home exam. So we will, if nothing has changed, it's going to be like home exam, but it's not decided yet. Do you have any question about the project? So if you go to the student portal, I put this course description, you will read it. So instructors, yeah, it's me and Pei Fu, she's going to help us with problem solving sessions and the labs. So here we have almost 12 lectures, 4 exercise sessions and 3 labs. Here I wrote about the guideline about writing report. I wrote that part A and B, you have to report minimal. You don't have to write a complete report. And I think you don't have to include your code even in the, this minimal part. So you just need to write something that we understand. Put the plots, mark the plots, write very shortly what is explained, what is plotted, and just write your solution. Then the last part, together with the last part, you have to write a complete report. So the report must follow this guideline, this shape. So there is a name, title, date of submission, introduction, what are you going to solve, part A, the problem formulation, solution, part B, problem formulation, your solution, etc. Then you have to conclude it, and at the end of this report, you have to put all your code inside one PDF. Okay, so I think many of you did really good in Scientific Computing 3 course. The project was, extremely well written. I think you can follow with the same way. Okay. So I have to mention something here. What is it? About the copying. I'm sure that you've heard already a lot. So you can, of course, go to this website about phishing, cheating. There have been a lot of cheating cases in the past. I was super kind and I didn't report it to the study council. But please, don't think about cheating, because every project, since it is individual, it will be, it will be checked with Urkund. It is plagiarism software. They have updated this year. It works extremely good. It even, compares pictures. So please don't think about cheating. Just, as much help you need, we are going to help you. I would be happy if you learn something in finite element, but I will not be happy if you learn cheating. There have been a lot of cases in the past, but I mean, specifically I wrote here and I remind you, don't think about cheating, because the plagiarism system is super good and it works. And this time I will definitely report to the student council. And I don't want that anyone has problem with that. So the project will be something like designing medical torus. I'm working on that. I will update the questions and description. For example, the final aim, we want to design some medical torus. So what is medical torus? So now some people get sick and they put some kind of medical, ring. Torus is like a ring. And inside this ring, they put some concentration of some medicine, I don't know, and they put it to the body, and by time the medicine, it released to the body, and with respect to the, depending on this radius, the thickness of this torus, and the big radius, the width of the torus, the size of the torus, and also the concentration of the medicine inside this, the amount of medicine or hormone will release with different rates. So the aim of this project, you have to design 3 parameters here. So you have to design this torus, which means that you have to find these 3 parameters: little radius, big radius, and concentration, so that the medical doctor says that after 2 days, certain amount of hormone should release to the body. After 1 week, another amount of hormones should release to the body, etc. So you have to find the optimized shape of this medical torus. So this is optimization problem. It is PDE driven optimization. So you have to solve some partial differential equation inside this torus, and this differential equation is written in this form. In general, it's the F is also depends on U, but I didn't write it here. So in general, it's reaction diffusion equation. So this part is diffusion part. The right hand side, when it depends on U, it's a reaction part. So you have to solve this equation in 3D, so inside this geometry. Okay, so like in 3D, you will see something like these pictures. So the medical torus would be something like this. Of course, we are approximating with some tetrahedrons here. So you see that the radius gives the thickness of this ring. Depending on what is your optimal design, you will see different shape. Okay. So this is going to be, so it is divided by 3 parts. First part is finite element 1D. So that says that, for example, we take one line, one cut from this 3D object. When you take one cut, it's going to be like one, you have to solve the PDE on the line. And this is going to be 1D, and there is a jump here along this ring. And there is a difficulty, you have to do some mesh refinement, etc. And 2D would be you take a cut as a surface like this. So the 2D shape would be something like that. So you will need to calculate the functional would be the amount of hormone which is released to the body. So this is, we will learn how to calculate these functions. And in 3D, of course, it's like a shape that I wrote it here. All right, so I can, after each course, we put this student evaluation, and one of the questions that I asked the students, what is the advice that they give to the future students to this course? So I'm going to put some of these advices here. So these are the, feedback from previous students. So they say that you have to attend lectures and lessons. Lessons means these problem-solving sessions. So after each lecture, I will assign a lot of homework problems. So all these homework problems, they are not graded. So I also put it here. Is it here? No. Yeah, I didn't put it in this. So anyways, after each lecture, I will put certain problem sessions. Then the problem session, let me just get my book. Do you see my video as well, or you just see my screen?
I can see you as well.
Yeah, okay. So this is a book, and all these homework problems that I assign, they correspond to the page number of this book and problem number. For example, after the chapter 1, we have these problem sets. And let me see here. So in page 20, for example, then I assign many problems like solve exercise 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, 8, for example, something like this. These exercises, they are not graded, but I strongly encourage that you solve all these problems by yourself. And many of these problems will be, of course, discussed and solved in the problem solving session by pay. Right? So this is what students say, is that you have to attend lectures and lessons. This is problem solving sessions. Yeah, find and use the book. So this is a book. You don't have to buy it. It is freely available from university webpage. But if you have any issue, just write me and I will send you the PDF. Start with the project way earlier than you think is necessary. So this is also what I said. This is project-driven course. It's not the other way around. So traditionally, we used to have several lectures and one exercise problem, right? several lectures, another project, etc. But this is not the same. It is one project. It's designed, which goes together with the course. So you should start as soon as I upload the project. You have to start working. You don't have to wait until the lab, because in the lab it's very useful if you find some questions that you can ask during the lab. Yeah, at least I record the lectures, but problem-solving sessions, Pei should decide if she wants to record. She will record. Otherwise, she will not record. But we will upload the solution from problem-solving sessions. All right. So there is another advice. It says that do each part of the project before the corresponding lab session. This is exactly what I said now. To have enough time asking questions. So you shouldn't wait until the lab sessions. You start working with the project, you will face some question. With this way, it will be much more useful, you know, to use these lab sessions that you can ask questions. Try to solve as much of the exercises as possible. It helps a lot to understand the theoretical material of the course. So you see, this is also what I already mentioned. After each lecture, I will upload problem, sets. Those problem sets, if you listen to the lecture, it will not take a lot of time of you, but I strongly encourage that you write it, you solve and write it in piece of paper. And the exam will be designed from those exercise sessions. I'm not saying that we will pick this exercise session, but it will be very similar to the problems from the exercise session. So you should solve it yourself. All right, here. Don't hesitate to ask the teachers about stuff you are uncertain about. They will explain it to you, and they will explain it in a way that you will understand. So somebody wrote it, somebody's opinion. Yeah, we will try our best. Anytime you have any question, if you don't understand the question by communicating by email, we have to set some Zoom meeting or Skype meeting. I will be happy to talk it to you in face and explain some difficulties or questions that you have. So don't hesitate about that. This is I'm repeating again. One of the feedbacks on this course evaluation was that students, they were not sure to communicate teachers because, during the traditional lectures, you go to the lecture room and you just raise your hand, you ask it. But even if you are not sure, it is okay. There is no stupid question. There is no clever question. All questions matters. We came here to learn this course, and we learn it together. So you shouldn't hesitate asking any question that you come up. Oh, there was also one comment, have fun. So I also wish that you would have fun in this project. Do you have any question about the project and course organization, examination? You can unmute yourself and ask your question if you have any question. Or write it in this in the chat.
I had a quick question about the grading.
Yes.
So if we get a 4 on the exam and we fail the project, we still pass the course. So we don't need to pass the project to pass the course.
No.
It's just step down one bit.
Yeah, but this is wrong. I mean, what I wrote here, fail means that you missed the deadline. Of course, okay. You have to pass the project to pass the course. I wrote it here.
Okay.
I wrote it, where is that? Examination. Yeah, examination. You see, you have 2 points for the project, but you have to pass the project. The only thing that if you want to have a high grade, you shouldn't fail the deadline. So you have to follow the deadline and complete your project in this time. So I think this is a bit misleading. I agree with you.
Is it possible to have the project deadline after Christmas?
Yes, we can think about that. Of course, if many of you think that after Christmas, what do you mean after Christmas? Is it after New Year or after?
January, beginning of January.
Beginning of January is fine, but you will have also exam during that time. Do you think it will be no problem?
I don't know.
Yeah, so this is up to you to discuss with your friends and just give me some opinion. And that's why I didn't put any deadline. So we have to decide ourselves. We have to put some deadline. We have to put a deadline which is fair so that it's not super stressful. You have to prepare for the exam as well. And this deadline, then we have to follow the deadline. After that, I think you can still complete your project, but you cannot get high grade. So this pass and fail, this is related to the deadline. Yeah, so there is also a really good question. I was just wondering if you can upload the lecture slides in advance. This is, yes, I can do that. Usually I upload it after the lecture because I write it, when I write it, I'm also a human being. I can make some mistakes. And during the lectures, sometimes I correct my mistakes. Then I correct my mistakes and I upload it. But you are right. I think it is better that I upload the lectures. Before the lectures, it is fine. I can do that. Any other questions so far?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah.
For those of us who consider looking into CFD or computational fluid dynamics, I looked into that at Uppsala University and I couldn't find a course for that here. How should you go about that if you're interested in that field?
Yeah, so you are right, there is no specific computational fluid dynamics course. And I think it is a little bit of shame that Uppsala doesn't have that course. But we have another option. I think next year in period 1, so it starts September 1st, we just finished that course this year. There's a course called Advanced Numerical Analysis, and it's a bit big course. It's 10 credits. It has finite difference and finite element part. And there I will teach CFD application. So if you are interested on taking some CFD related topic, I think this is one of the courses that we offer. Any other question? So I see that it is 59. Maybe we take a break and then we will continue with the what do you think? We can continue with the finite element, right? So let's take a break. I will pause this recording. Do you see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah, very good. Thank you. So we came to, we just concluded the course organization. We talked about the examination. We talked also about the project. And we say that project is individual. I mean, you have to write your own code and your own report. And for this part A and B, you have to submit very minimal report. So you don't have to include your code at the end. But for part C, you have to put part C and you have to write a complete report and you have to upload your code at the end of your report. So it should be one PDF that you are going to upload it. So yeah, let's move on, and we start with the topic. This is finite element course, and I just put some important pictures. So if you have taken the scientific computing course, maybe you have seen some of these pictures already. But I want to mention that finite element method is numerical approximation of some PDE. So we cannot solve some of the PDEs we cannot solve. When I say PDE, it's a partial differential equation. It can be also applied for ordinary differential equation, but there are many applications which are difficult and important. They are in partial differential equations. So the method was first invented, maybe it was earlier than Ritz, but it was published by a paper by Ritz. I think it was around 1914. So Ritz wrote a paper. He wrote about some minimization problem of for some symmetric PDEs, and the method that Ritz wrote, it only worked for just symmetric type of PDEs. For example, for the Poisson equation or some elliptic, you know, we are going to discuss more, of course. If you remember Poisson equation, it's one of the equations that you can write it, and it's going to be a symmetric form. And Ritz method was a minimization problem, which was, yeah, he wrote a paper on that. So later, I think around 16th, Boris Galerkin, he's a Russian scientist and engineer. He was either translating Ritz paper or he was writing some review to Ritz paper. And what he did, he took a paper. I mean, these stories I read from Russian, of course, literature. He took a paper, and on one side, he just put a remark. He just said that, oh, so Ritz method can be written in this form. So it was like a very short remark. Actually, that short remark, it became really big subject. And this finite element course that we are studying, it's based on the way that Galerkin didn't invent finite element method, but he found a best way of, you know, pretending what would be the Ritz representation in a practical sense. So Galerkin, he wrote some paper in the 1916. Then there was a Russian Revolution, there was a war, etc. Then he wrote actually one of the main papers on finite element way that he wrote it, he introduced in the 40s. So meanwhile, Richard Courant, he worked in the US. He also wrote something similar, which was the idea of, you know, finite elements. But his paper didn't get so much attention because it was really hard to read. You know, you can be very good scientist, you can write really excellent ideas, but if it is not practical, people, they will not read your stuff. So Ivo Babushka, he's, I think he's originally from Czech. He moved to the US. He worked in Texas. I worked with one project with Ivo Babushka. I met him personally. He extended this finite element approximation in terms of application. So he actually started to write code. So he said that this method is really applicable and you can solve complicated problems, etc. And he contributed a lot on the, you know, mathematical analysis of this method. From discussion that I had with Ivo, one of the key, you know, thing that I remember, he always, when you start any discussion, any meeting, any project, he always say that you have to define your goal. So what is the goal of this meeting? What is the goal of today's lecture? What's the goal of this project, etc. I mean, he says that you have to define your goal very precisely, then you have to go toward this goal. And I think I actually agree with him. And it's also one advice for the students that you have to put a goal. Do you want to learn finite element, this course, or you want just to pass? So this is it actually, you know, changes the way that you study the book and do homeworks, project, etc. So Gilbert Strand, he worked in MIT. He did a lot in mathematical theories of finite element. He has a lot of good lectures. I recommend that Google him, and I think he has a lot of open lectures in YouTube from MIT. So and he's excellent lecturer, and I think you will enjoy some of his lecture. So Claes Jonsson, he's a Swedish mathematician. The books that I told you, it is this guy who wrote it. And I could also say that Claes Jonsson, he is like a father of finite element in Sweden. What do I mean? All people who work finite element in Sweden, either direct student of Claes Jonsson or his grant student. So like my advisor is Claes Jonsson. So Claes Jonsson, he did his postdoc in the US, and in the 70s, he learned this idea of finite element and he brought it to Sweden. He created really big center in Gothenburg, and it was called Finite Element Center. It actually had one big house, and I mean, he contributed a lot. So these books that I mentioned, I think you can find it online, and I recommend that read his book, and he's one of the experts in this field. So yeah, so what is the research in finite element that people are doing these days? Of course, the first part, since we are solving some realistic, you know, problems from nature, from industry, there is always a modeling problem. You have to model it. You cannot, you have a physical process, you have to model with some kind of equation, with some differential equation, most likely. And once you have a model, then you do this discretization. You have to, discretization is like approximately, first you model, you try to solve it exactly. Most of the problems, you cannot solve it exactly, they are difficult. Then you try to solve it approximately, you find some numerical discretization for that. Once you do discretization, then you have to make sure that your discretization converges to the exact solution if it exists. So then the analysis part of this research, it's about convergence, existence, uniqueness, error estimates, etc. So this is like quite wide. And in this course, we will probably not talk about convergence and existence that much. We will do a lot error estimates. So when you do approximation, we want to say that, you know, this a priori or before solving this equation numerically, we want to estimate how big error we can introduce with finite element approximation. So once you go to implementation, of course, similar to finite differences, we need some mesh. Mesh is like you take a domain, you split it by finite number of either points, intervals, elements, etc. Then on the top of, this is a meshing problem, and on the top of this mesh, you have to create a linear, you know, discrete system. It's going to be some usually linear algebra systems. Computation. So since the project, you know, the problems, the industrial problems are really huge, you have to write a code which is HPC, high performance computing friendly. So today's in industry, it is not enough that you take your laptop, you simulate something in MATLAB and say that this is my approximation and this is what we use. It doesn't work anymore like that. All these, you know, applications, you have to use million of points, billion of points to approximate your equation. And according to this really huge systems and solution, you have to actually conclude the applicability of your approximation. Visualization. So once you solve your solution, in MATLAB, for example, you use plot, but for this open source environment or large scale, you cannot use simple plot because MATLAB, the data is so big that you cannot fit in one computer. So MATLAB plot does not usually work. So there have been a lot of development. You create data, you create a lot of output, and you have to visualize it. You have to see visually what does it mean. You have to collect some functions, functionals, etc. So this is, I think we use one of these main developments. It's called ParaView. So when we come to the Phoenix part, I will put some short documentation how to use ParaView to visualize your data. So I usually like to show some examples that I do from my research. I think I showed many others from I think aerodynamics, but this time let me just show something about atmospheric simulation. So here, as I said, we have a physical, if I go back. So when we do this modeling is like we have a physical process. We have something in physics, we want to model it with differential equation. Then we approximate it, then we analyze that it converges or not. Implementation, you have to implement it in some code. Then computation, you have to compute and do some kind of expectation about the physical process. So it was similar here. The physical process was to study the formation of hurricane, for example. So if you search for hurricane, for example, these are real life pictures is taken, I think it's by NASA. It's taken from the from the sky. They took this is the formation, really huge hurricane. So the question is how this hurricane they form and how to calculate the energy produced by this hurricane. So I mean, of course, you cannot measure this because it is really huge. You cannot go to this point. You cannot send any measurement. The only thing that we can do at this point, we just need to model it with some equation. Then once we have a model, we validate it. We find some nice approximation. Then we can say something about that. So this is also physical process which says that this is the equator line. If you go to the north part of this equator, because of this force, the rotation of these vortices, let's say that in the temperature, in the air, you have cold and warm temperatures. So as north you go to this globe, the temperature is getting colder, but when you go close to the equator, it is warmer. You go down to this south, it's again cold. So there's a cold front, warm front, which is somewhere here. When it is warm, the pressure drops, then the cold air, moves towards the wall. So cold air moves from the north to the south. But here it becomes circulation because it has to change. There's an exchange of cold and warm air. It turns out that the circulation has opposite sign. So here it is clockwise, on the south pole it is anti-clockwise. So you include it in the model, and for example, if you look at the same behavior for Jupiter, you will see something also of the formation of hurricanes. This is like small these vortices, which is obtained by this circulation. They join and they become, when they join, if they have the same sign, they get bigger, and if they have opposite sign, they dissipate each other, and they get, they disappear. So this is like something like this, some pictures. This is also real life picture taking by NASA. This is in the surface of Jupiter. So mathematically, it turns out that it could be modeled with this equation. It's called surface quasi-geostrophic equation. We are looking for the temperature. This is tau is, theta is temperature here, and u is a velocity. So this is the velocity which, you know, on the north pole it is clockwise, on the south pole it is anti-clockwise. So this is actually modeled by this kind of operator. You don't have to know right now, but you have to think about that this operator takes in account equator line, so something like this. So when you solve it, this is advection diffusion equation when alpha is equal to 1. It's a usual diffusion operator. When you solve it, then yeah, here we start with really random noise, like in temperature. Now in the atmosphere, you have a lot of these cold and warm temperature differences. If you just take it pointwise, of course, it's not uniformly the same temperature. Then we solve it, and you get something like, you see, like in time, these are vortices. In time, they join. When they join, they have the same sign, they get bigger. When they have opposite sign, they dissipate. And eventually, these are the, you know, this is big vortices, which eventually they call it like hurricanes. So these are really huge vortices. I have some simulation if it works. Do you see my video?
Yeah, we can see it.
Yeah, very good. So you see that I start with really random data, and this is like it's like I have this torus. This torus is like a globe. So I have periodic boundary condition on the left and right, on the bottom and top. Then I start with some random data. It's a temperature difference at every point. So when I solve, you see that slowly this kind of vortices, they appear. And some of them, they are rotating clockwise. Some of them are rotating anti-clockwise. And eventually the one which is, you know, has the same size, they join, and eventually they get bigger. So you see, this is, for example, is getting bigger. This is bigger, but some of them, they break down and they create small vortices. And these small vortices, by time, they can again, they start to grow, etc. So unlucky part, if these vortices are joining, having the same, you know, sign, then eventually they become like hurricanes. They become really huge. And yeah, so this is what the problem is we are looking for. But numerically, once we find it, once we find these kind of big vortices, we have all the data. We can actually approximately see what is the energy produced, released by this, you know, big vortex. And because of this energy, then we can predict what could be this disaster rate, or can we pretend, can we build a wall or something? I don't know. Something like this. If this is a question for the physicists. All right, so there are a lot of other applications that I did in the past. These are for CFD. And the good thing with finite element, they work for unstructured mesh. For example, here, this is a simulation of realistic Volvo car. So we got a geometry from Volvo car company, and we were approximating the drag force which is acting to this car. So, I mean, these solutions are obtained by several thousand of processors. And the good thing with these kind of simulations, this is like a mimic the wind tunnel in Volvo company. So instead of building a real car, because in real life, you know, application, what they do, they build a car, they put to the wind tunnel, they blow air, they put some measurements, they calculate the pressure drop. Because of that, they calculate the drag force. Then they see what is the, for example, here is red. So this is influencing a lot for the pressure. So if you make the shape of the car much more, you know, this pressure friendly, this will reduce the drag force, something like this. But numerically, you can just, you know, exchange this, all these really difficult and expensive experiments by just numerical simulation. You do the simulation and you design it. You say that, oh, there's a big pressure here, for example, and then they give you another geometry. But this way, it is much cheaper, and of course, it saves a lot of time and money, of course, something like this. Do you have any question about finite element, just application-wise, history? Yeah, if no, I can only say something here. All these applications are done with the Phoenix project, and that's why I thought that it's good that we use this Phoenix project in this course. You will learn some open source software. You can download it for free. And once you learn solving PDEs with Phoenix, I think in future it will be of interest of many companies, even though they have commercial software. If you say that you have experience of using open source software and you can, you know, install, download, you can modify, run, visualize, and Phoenix project works in parallel in many processors. You can actually start doing this parallel computation by yourself. I think it will be really good point in your CV. So this is what I thought. But the drawback with the Phoenix project is we don't have a nice graphical interface like MATLAB. So it's not like you download, you get this nice graphical interface and you click and you solve it. It's not like that. You write your code on some editors, for example, Emacs, for example. Then you compile your code like any C++ or Python code. Then you run your code in the terminal. It will output some files. Those files you can visualize. So you have to change your mindset a little bit that open source, many open source softwares, they do not have a graphical interface because this is not the main focus of this open source development. The main focus is to make available some tools, some programs that solve this kind of complex, you know, problems. The rest, just graphical interface, is just it's something that the users, they can decide if they want to develop by themselves. All right, so I stop sharing it. Let me start my all right, so let me do. Do you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Very good. So let me just put it like this. All right. So one thing that I should say that I always use whiteboard like this, and I write it. I write my lecture live. But for this today's lecture, since we just use some common definitions, and these are definitions that we actually used in Scientific Computing 3 course. So I'm not going to write right now, but from the next lecture, I write all my lectures live. So, but if you prefer that I should show with like a presentation mode, you have to write me email, then we'll be able to discuss. So yeah, let me start from the second definition. We use a lot of vector spaces in this course, in finite element field. Vector spaces, yeah. One of the reasons that we use a lot of elements from functional analysis is that the approximation that we are making with finite elements, they are functions, you know, like I can from the, for example, if this is like a solution for the PDE like this, U with finite differences is what we did. We split this domain by finite number of points. And the approximation that we looked for finite differences were like point values. So these are the discrete points that we approximate with finite differences. But this is not the case with finite elements. With finite elements, we are going to find some functions like these functions that approximates your continuous function. You say like these functions, it's not the point values, they are functions. We are approximating functions by functions. So that's why we have to practice, where do you take these functions from? What kind of spaces? The space is like all this collection of the function which you put in some box. What kind of properties those spaces have, and what kind of tools that you have to introduce. So these are elements from functional analysis. I don't expect that you took this functional analysis before coming to this course. That's why I just want to give some important definitions that will be useful in this subject. So for many of you, probably it is just repeating, but I just want to make sure that everyone comes to one page. When we talk about vector space from the next lecture, I mean, we should talk with the same language. That's why, even though it is repeating for some of you, I just want to quickly mention it, and we move forward. So the vector spaces, it's a set that is closed with two operations, addition and multiplication by a number. So vector spaces, think about a box which has a lot of tools inside the box. And we call this box is vector space if two operations are defined. Like first, we take two tools from this box randomly, we add it, and it becomes another tool which also belongs to that box. So this is like, that says that addition means that you take, I can just write it in green here. For example, you take X from this V, you take Y from this V. That means that X plus Y also belongs to this toolbox, this space V. And multiplication by a number, it says that you take some number from real line, you take any element from this box, and when you multiply this number to the element, it's actually another element to that box. So this is like, it shouldn't be surprised that you take two tools from the box, you add it, it doesn't belong to that box. This is not the vector space. So once you close this space with these two operations, you have to define several axioms. For example, if X plus Y is an element to that box, what happens to Y plus X? So this vector space is, therefore, it has 8 axioms. These are the followings. So when you add X to Y, it is the same as Y to X. For real numbers, it is just trivial, but I just want to you that you have to think a little bit wider. We are not working anymore with the real numbers. We are working with some abstract vector spaces.
And the elements of this vector space, it could be numbers, it could be functions, it could be, I don't know, tables, it could be something else. This is like a general framework that we are working on. So there is also associativity property, which says that we take 3 elements now from that box, from this function space. If we add 2 of them and add to the last one, it is the same as you add to the other one and add it with the first one. So this doesn't change the result. And also the third one is existence of 0 element. So that says that inside this space, there's the element 0. That means that you add 0, that element, to any element in that function space, yeah, you get X. It doesn't change your vector. And axiom 4 says about the existence of negative element. So that says that for every tool in this box, there is a negative tool, but that is when you add it, the result is 0. So this part is just the multiplication property. You multiply a vector to some constant, then you multiply this vector, the new vector, to another constant. It is exactly the same as if you multiply the constant and the vector. So this is also, you add the constants, then you multiply by vector. It is the same as a linear combination of this constant to the vector. Right, so this is also similar to this axiom. And the 8th one is existence of unit vector. Unit vector is 1. You multiply that vector to any element to this in this space. Of course, this is for all X from that space. And that is, you get the element itself. So because of these axioms, these operations, later when we write our variational formulation, finite element formulation, they make sense because we are actually using a lot of this addition, multiplication by a number. We replace a lot, these places, etc. So they make sense because of these 8 axioms, and we are working with these vector spaces. Okay. Then I should come back here. We use a lot of these so-called linear operations, linear functionals. And one of these linear functionals could be, remember, we use some integration from, for example, 0 to 1. And let me just write not 0 to 1, but some omega. And we take some f times v dx. Do you remember this? This is like right inside in your variational formulation, but if you don't remember, don't worry, we will come back to that. So the point is, it takes any element from this vector space V, and it does some kind of operations here, which the result, the integral, is of course a number, right? When you calculate the integral of some function, is a number. So it is exactly what it does. Linear map, linear functional. It takes any element from this space, and when it acts, the result will be a number. So we use a lot these linear functionals because when you write variational formulation, we work with integrals. And you should think that once you change the functions, the result of the integrals are just real numbers. I mean, in general, it could be complex, but I think we just restrict our discussion on real numbers. One of the examples, for example, if you take a vector from Rn, then this linear functional could be just a scalar product of a vector to another vector which is given from Rn, and the result scalar product of these two vectors is just a number. So we use a lot something called inner product in this vector space. You see, like once we introduce the vector space, then in this vector space we introduce a linear functional. Now in this vector space together with linear functional, we have to introduce something called, another operation which is called inner product. So in a product, it means that you take two elements from the vector space and you do some kind of operations. For example, this object, x comma y, I mean, in general, it is written in this form, but it is nothing else than x comma x is integral x squared dx. So this is like in the L2, L2 is one of the example. So the way that we do integration in finite elements, this is going to be a lot of these kind of operations. So they are actually in a product, and we have to define this inner product in these vector spaces. Inner product has the following properties. Of course, for example, this integration is 0 if and only if x is 0. If you look to this integration analogous, the result is 0 if the integrand is 0. So here is like, you know, when you sum, then multiply by z, you just split it by the sum of this inner product. If you multiply inner product by some constant, you can pull out. It's similar, like if you multiply lambda here, you can pull out lambda from the integration, etc. So the last one is like about the Cauchy sequence. It's about the completeness, because when we are working with finite elements, we want to, you know, we approximate it, right? We use certain number of points, we approximate it, we refine the mesh, we construct another number of points, we approximate it. So we make sure, we have to make sure that the sequence of the approximations, they converge in this vector space. And actually the limit should be also one of the elements in vector space. So this is like one requirement that this comes from the Cauchy sequence. So don't worry if it is, these words are not so familiar to you, but we will come back to that. So yeah, when we introduce these sequences, imagine that now in the vector space, we have this, we take this UH is approximating your solution U, then you refine the your mesh size, and you make like H divided by 2 is also approximating U, etc. So you are constructing this sequence of approximations. So these are for different H, the sequence. And we say that it should be Cauchy. That means that the limit of this sequence, when H goes to 0, should converge to some function, to some element which also belongs to this space. So if this element does not belong to the space, it doesn't make sense, right? Our approximation, we have to make sure that the limit that we are looking, it is also one in our toolbox. And if you want to make sure, you know, this property that every limit also lives in this space, vector space, that space in general is called the Banach space. So that means that every Cauchy sequence converges. And in addition, in that space, which we come, you know, in the Banach space, if we introduce this inner product rule, like integration, you know, then this is called the Hilbert space. And actually, all these approximations that we learn in finite element framework, they all belong to Hilbert space. So this is, that's why I just want to give this kind of definitions about the Hilbert space. So if I draw like vector spaces could be in general really wide. So there's no any restriction. They are vector space. What is vector space? You just add these two elements. It's going to be in the space. You take any element, you multiply by some number. It's also in that space. There's no additional operation. This space is much wider. Then we introduce some norm. So the norm is like for every element for that space, we introduce some kind of function. The function is positive. Think about if you just take a real number, a real line, the norm could be just the absolute value. It's some kind of function which is positive. It is 0 if the function itself is 0 or vector itself is 0. So these kind of operations are true. The last one is triangle inequality. So it's also analogous for absolute value for the real line, like A plus B, this is equal to A plus B. So something like this called triangle inequality. So in your vector space, when you introduce some norm, this is one of the subspace of this big vector space. It's called norm vector space. And you see that inside the norm vector space, now, when you talk about this convergence of the sequences, you have to talk about, with respect to some norm, they converge, right? So that's why Banach space actually lives inside the vector space. And this inner product space, the space that I introduced a bit earlier with this integration, for example, this was integral U times V dx in some omega for U and V from this space. Then the intersection of inner product space and Banach space, this is a space that we are working in finite element. So finite element actually leave here all the approximation that we want to make sure, and this is called the Hilbert space. So this is the Hilbert space which lives inside. So I mean, of course, if you're taking functional analysis course, everything is trivial to you. But if you are not taking functional analysis course, you don't have to, know much about those. But you have to think that the approximation that we are constructing with finite elements, they make sense in some, in terms of convergence, because we have to converge to some solution. In terms of norm, because we have to construct some norms. In terms of inner product, because variational formulation is just inner product. And this is a space that we are working, and a lot of tools later that we use, some of the inequalities like Cauchy-Schwarz, etc., they actually come from this space. Okay, so I think there are some examples of Hilbert space. The most well-known one that we use actually here, the L2 space. L2 space is a space of all square integrable functions. And if you define the inner product as this is going to be a Hilbert space, because, of course, additionally, you have to prove that all sequences convergence and Cauchy sequence converge. But you don't have to know all these details, but you have to, realize that when we work with L2 spaces, this is square integrable functions, they are Hilbert spaces. They are something that we need. And yeah, this is, I think, what I wanted to just remember everyone. Do you have any question? I think I should come to this diagram here. Any questions so far? So now,
yeah, Murtaza.
Yes.
Could you scroll a bit up, because there's something that you wrote that so you up. So when you're talking about Banach space, yeah,
Yes.
that okay. No, it was just that notation, right? So you denote that sequence of halving the h every time by UH sub h as h tends to 0.
Yeah. So what I wanted to say here, since in finite element we find some approximation, right?
Yep.
And that approximation depends on h.
Yes.
So then the idea with any numerical methods is you refine the mesh, then you get a better approximation. You refine more, you get more better.
Yes.
And with this way you construct a sequence. So if this sequence does not have a limit in that space, it doesn't, that space is useless.
Okay.
For us, we don't need that space. So we just want to make sure that if this sequence has a limit, and if this sequence is Cauchy sequence, I mean, this is something that you have to read by yourself, but think about just a sequence, convergence sequence. The limit should be also in that space. Otherwise, you are looking for something that does not exist in your space. You cannot, use that. There, it is not useful.
Okay, so then, like, you could informally say, of course, you're trying to approximate something in some space with some, let's call it bases in this case, right? So you,
Yes.
of course, cannot approximate something that is not on your space with things that are in your space or something like that.
Exactly. So I can just give one example. So I take this interval 0 and 1, and let's say from this interval, I include 1, but I exclude 0. I exclude 0, but now I construct this sequence, 1 over x, no, 1 over n. N goes from 1 to infinity. So this sequence has a limit. What is the limit? Limit is 0, right?
Yes.
Limit of 1 over n is 0, but 0 does not belong in this set.
Okay.
Because 0 is extracted from this set. So that means that we avoid this kind of situations. We want to make sure that every limit that we are looking for this kind of, for this kind of sequences that we construct in the space, it is living in the space. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Anything else? Yeah, so just to conclude today's lecture, I gave you some, basic information about the course that I hope that you will go and read the course guideline again by yourself. If you have any question, just let me know. Any question about the project, examination, final exam, please let me know. I also put all the examination into the student portal. I think from now, you can just start looking to some solutions and problem sets, and you have to aim. As Ivo Babushka said, you have to put a goal. You have to put a goal and you have to work to your goal. Otherwise, this goal, you cannot reach it right away. Then the second part of this lecture, I talked about basic notation that we are going to use. We talk about function spaces a lot. And these function spaces, we say that they are vector spaces. So we are not working anymore with the points. Like in finite differences, you work with the points, but here we work with the elements, with functions. And these are some basic, definitions that of which kind of function space we are using. So yes, there's a question about if Python is used in the project. For part A and B, I recommend you use MATLAB, because in this book, there are a lot of MATLAB scripts that are really useful. So you're welcome to use these scripts and write your code on the top. But if you prefer Python, it's up to you. But part 3, Phoenix project, I think if you use Python interfaces, it has a Python interface. It is much academical, and there are a lot of information, documentation online. You can start with some demo program, and that's you. It's going to be Python. And another question, what are the deadlines for the project and assignments? So assignment, if you mean homework assignments that I give every day, every lecture, they are not compulsory. You don't need to submit it, but it's up to you to solve. But the final deadline for the project, I'm going to decide this week. And I will also, of course, ask you, and this is something that we have to discuss and decide together, okay? We will do it this week, hopefully. All right, anything else? So thank you so much for today. I will, when this recording, because it is a lot of data, when it is done, I will upload it to the student portal. And yeah, I hope to see you next time. Bye-bye.